Hey guys, it's Kevin again. This is going to be our review for Gotham, Season 1, Episode 9, Harvey Dent. And that is how you write an episode of Gotham. Like, this episode was just amazing. I loved it. I was so into this episode. I was surprised by how into it I really was, because everything going on in this episode was so interesting. I loved everything that was really going on, and I actually can't wait for the mid-season finale now. I'm really looking forward to it. It's taking Gotham a little while to find its niche, but I think they finally found it. And, I think they found out what they want it to be. And if they continue Gotham this way, I'm going to be very happy with this show. Because this is what I want the show to be. Is a show about these characters. And maybe have maybe have like the case thing be like to the side, which I like. In fact, there is no case in this episode. Like, this is setting up the case, which I really like, definitely. And let's just get to it, because I thought this episode was just amazing. I loved it. And one of the things that this episode did perfectly was Selina Kyle. Let's just give it up to whoever plays Selina Kyle. You gotta have her on the show. If Selina Kyle is on your show, you need to have her included in like the whole episode, because she's amazing. So Jim comes home calling for Barbra, and he has Selina with him, and she says it's a fancy place for a cop, and he says it's his girlfriend's, and he finds a note from Barbra, simply telling him she went away for a while until she can pull herself together mentally, and she's scared because she's scared of, Victor. And I'm kind of thinking, didn't, Jim want her to, like, get on that bus in Penguin's umbrella to get away from Gotham? Didn't he want her to do that? So why is he upset about it? I don't get it. I mean, he was the one that told her, I want you to leave Gotham and, to protect yourself, but he's, like, surprised about it. I don't understand why, but, I mean, whatever. He goes to take a call, and Selina reads a note and says it looks like his girlfriend is taking off on him, and she asks if she can stay, and he says he has a place for her, and he brings her to Wayne Manor. And I was so excited when we saw Wayne Manor, because there's a knock, and he tells her it's a sketch artist he wants her to describe the Wayne's killer to, and she asks where he's going to make her stay. And we see a dangerous inmate is being transported, and he's a genius bomb maker named Ian Hargrove, who can make a bomb out of almost anything. And the lead guard tells the others to be on high alert as they load him into the van. He spits something from his mouth into his hands just before they slap wide leather shackles on him. Now, this is not really shown a lot, which I really like, because I really like it when the show does not focus on the case. It's not really interesting, and I thought this was actually an interesting case. I like where this one was going. So Jim shows the sketch Selina described to Bruce and Alfred, and he tells them about Selina, and Alfred asks how he can ask a common street criminal to live with him, because, she is a street criminal, she has done many crimes, and, basically says her being there will put Bruce in danger, but Bruce says if she can help catch his parents' killer, she can stay as long as it takes, because this is all about finding his killer. So Jim says he, Renee, and, Chrysippus are meeting with a trustworthy ADA today to try and press on the case. So Jim tells him that witnesses that stick it out to testify care about their victims. And the second that Bruce saw Selina, I'm not kidding, the second they saw them, I love them already. I love the chemistry they have, and in my opinion, Bruce and Selina have the best chemistry on this entire show. They just have perfect chemistry. The second I saw them, I'm like, I cannot wait to see their scenes, because he finds Selina playing with a Ming vase, and she says you can get one just like it for $5 in Chinatown. He smiles at how pretty she is, and they introduce themselves. She tells him to call her Cat, and he does. They seem to be getting along really well. I mean, they have a nice handshake and everything, and I love the scenes with them. So Ian plays with something in the mitten that's strapped onto his hand. The guard tells him to stop and pulls out gum on a metal object. A truck cuts off the van. A guy gets out, shoots up all the guards. Ian hears his name called and is told it's time to go. He's in shock, but has to go. The armed men have killed the guards transporting him. And here we meet Harvey Dent. So I was definitely looking forward to this episode because of the fact that we'd be meeting Two-Face. I'm not going to call him Harvey Dent because we already have a character on the show named Harvey Dent. So I'm going to call him Two-Face so I don't confuse myself. Because the one mistake I feel that Gotham made was have two characters on the show named Harvey. I don't know why they decided to do that. If they want to do that, kill off Harvey Bullock and then bring on Harvey Dent. I mean, it would make more sense if they did that. Because now we have two characters on the show named Harvey, and it was a little too confusing in my opinion. So Two-Face makes a bet with a kitty juvenile criminal. He offers to flip a coin with the kid for jailer going back to school and playing it straight, and he flips the coin and the kid calls heads. And it's head and he tells the kid to go on, and I love the guy that's playing Harvey Dent. He actually is doing a very good job in my opinion. I liked him definitely right away. He's a really good actor, and, you know, they're talking about how teens always call heads and shows them it's a double-sided coin. And he takes a look at the info on the Wayne murder and asks if they've heard of Dick Lovecraft. Now, he's a billionaire that Falcone and the mayor and the Waynes all did business with. So he thinks Lovecraft was involved in the murders and wants to use the witness to go after him. So Jim says that the witness didn't see Lovecraft, but Harvey says saying the witness has info leading to Lovecraft will rattle cages. Because basically Lovecraft is the guy that they think was the one that committed these murders, was the one that killed Bruce's parents. So Harvey says they don't even have to file papers or name names, and they just create a buzz to create a break in the case. And he says he wants to make the city a better place, so Jim cuts a deal to try as long as his witness's name is not revealed so she's not in danger. So he then goes back to GCPD, and you know what, I'm going to call Harvey Bullock because I think it's going to confuse me if I don't do that. Bullock tells him about the bomber Harsgrove escaped, and of course that was the guy that had the gun and everything, and he says he was busted out by 4 gunmen, which is odd since he was a lone wolf who was isolated in jail and for life. So his brother John was his only visitor in jail, and they're bringing him in, and Jim looks down, and Harvey asks if he's having dame problems, and he tells him high society girls are always problems, and, you know, he can tell right away that he's having problems with Barbra. So Bruce and Alfred spar, and I thought the scene was great. Selina Kyle, this actress, she knows how to make a scene funny. She really does do a great job, definitely. Selina watches them, and Bruce is distracted looking at her. Alfred sneaks in a punch. She asks why he's learning to fight, and he says so he'll be prepared. She scoffs and says he lives in a rough neighborhood, and I love that she's just like, you live in a rough neighborhood. What harm can happen to you? So, you know, basically, she says she's hungry. Alfred says that she slept through breakfast and lunches at noon. And Bruce offers to have Alfred fix her something, and he says it's not her hotel. She walks away, and Bruce says she's their guest. Alfred says he didn't realize Bruce fancied her. Bruce asks him about girls. Alfred tells him she's trouble. They go back to sparring, and the thing is, I really like the line, because as we know, Bruce and Selina are eventually going to become a couple. We know that they get together. We know that they have a relationship, and I personally am really looking forward to it because these two, as I said, have the best chemistry of anyone on this show. These two just work so well together. They're perfect, definitely. I don't understand why we couldn't just have scenes with them earlier. I do understand why. They want to make this show slow paced, which I'm fine with, but this really showed me that why couldn't we have just gotten this before, because these scenes were just great between them. I love their scenes. So Bruce says she's their guest, and Alfred says he didn't really, basically, Oswald then picks the lock to go into an apartment, and Oswald in this episode was awesome. I gotta say, he was very creepy, and he's probably, as I said, the best villain on the show by far. And, you know, I did say that Oswald was my favorite character, but after this episode, no. Selina Kyle is the best character on the show. She can change a scene within, like, that. She makes the scene so much more interesting, and I love that about her character. So Oswald picks a lock into an apartment, and it's Liza's place, and he looks at a photo of her and Falcone and wonders what she's up to. Because remember, he has no idea about Fish's plan. So he's starting to get a little bit suspicious here, and he goes through her purse and then to the bedroom where he sniffs an item of clothing, and he checks her perfume bottles and sniffs them and then compares them to the clothing, and he says that it's Ilax. So he takes the shirt and leaves, and I love the way he's just like, Ilax. So he takes the shirt and leaves just before she came home. He hides up in a flight of stairs to avoid her. She notices her shirt is gone, hears a sound, and he's off and rushing back down the stairs, and she doesn't see him. And John then tells Harvey and Jim he has no idea what's up with his brother. He says he and his brother are close, and the bomb that killed the janitors was an accident. He says he's not a killer. He says his brother blew up munitions factories that made weaponry and was trying to do good. And John says none of Ian's bombs hurt anyone until the last, and he felt so guilty he turned himself in and pleaded guilty. So we then see Ian constructing a bomb that he builds into a picnic basket, and John says his brother had mental problems and his family couldn't afford to get him help, and he says Blackgate didn't help his brother either, and he says Ian isn't bad, just sick, and Ian gets down with the bomb, looks around to see that he's not watched, peels off a metal furniture label from the table he's working at, and puts it with the bomb. So John says his brother needs help. He says he's been taken. They take the bomb basket he's made, put some pricey foods in it. It looks like a fancy hamper. And at a Gotham's munitions faculty, the basket's dropped off at a delivery and everything. You know, I don't want to talk too much more about this. But, Bruce is then reading the paper, and Selina comes in, and she joins him, and she tells him the house makes noises, and he says it's old, and he offers for Alfred to buy her some clothes, but she says no, and he asks her what living on the streets is like, and if she lives alone. And I really like the scene because, you know, we know that she is an orphan, but she's saying, no, she does have parents, and they're around and wants to know what it is to him because she doesn't want to admit the fact that she's an orphan, which she is. You know, she was in that orphanage. She had those really creepy parents, and they did really creepy stuff to her, so she pretty much just doesn't want to admit that she's an orphan like him, and that's one of the things I love about Selina and Bruce, is that they are so similar, but Selina does not want to be like Bruce because she is just such a more tough person and doesn't really want to be like him. So I think that's really cool the way they're writing that. Really good writing there, definitely. So she says she has lots of family and she stomps out of the room. Obviously, it's not good there. So Essen tells Harvey and Jim that 5 security guards are dead and the press is calling Ian an urban terrorist, and basically, she says using explosives to steal explosives is crazy, and Jim says he thinks they're going after harder to crack target with the HMX, and Alfred calls and says Selina's safe, but says it won't work out, and he says she's a tough nut, but Jim says they need her safe. He says he'll come in as soon as he can, and Alfred isn't pleased. He doesn't want to deal with Selina right now. He doesn't want to deal with her. So, Fish works when Butch comes in, tells her everything's good. He asks if she's sure she wants to go through with the plan, and she tells him not to get scared on her now. So, Oswald comes in the club, he's laughing, and she says he must love being hurt, and he says he was passing by and thought he'd say hello. He says he's just being friendly, leans in and sniffs her. Obviously, he's on to her. He knows something is going on between her and Liza. He knows that they are doing something against Falcone, and he wants to know what it is. So he once again says Ilax, and he tells her she smells good, and she says that he doesn't. He tells her she's snappy as ever. He tells her bye and says he's sorry. She's still grumpy with him. He says reaching out in friendship is never wrong, and leaves. And Butch says 4 words, and I thought this was awesome. He's just like, that dude is creepy. I agree. He is creepy, definitely. So she says to forget him, and he's nothing. And then we get back to the case and everything, which I don't want to talk too much about. But Jim tells Harvey that Barbra left and he doesn't know where she's gone. And Harvey says it's a pressure tactic to get him to set a date for the wedding. Because, you know, they never set a date. And then Ed comes in. One of the funniest scenes we've had so far, in my opinion. I think this is probably one of his funniest scenes. He randomly asks if they play video games, and he says he loves them, and each is like a new puzzle. And he says he found a new nameplate in the Shrapnel. It's from an abandoned metal factory. And Harvey tells him it's good work, and they go to check it out. They creep into the place. He sees Ian working on another bomb. He raises his hands and tells them they broke him out of prison, kidnapped him, and threatened his brother's family if he didn't help them. So, basically, the Russians show up, Ian warns them so they don't have time to duck. They exchange fire with them, the Russians are able to grab Ian and get away. Jim and Harvey run after them, but they're long gone, and this is just really intense what's going on here. So, Selina looks out the window, and then opens a latch, and Bruce comes in and tells her they can call her a taxi if she wants to go somewhere. She says he moves quiet, and he says she does too. He asks if she's leaving, and she says she's thinking about it. He says he's sorry he made her upset talking about her family, but she denies that she was bothered by it. She says, oh, don't worry, I wasn't bothered by it or anything. And she looks at the photo and asks if it's his mom, and she says she looks nice, and he says she was. She is starting to care about him, definitely. You can tell that she is feeling for him here. And he asks if she saw her the night she was killed, and if she also saw him, what he did and didn't do, which of course we know that she did saw, because the very first scene of this show was us seeing Selina watching that murder. So, Selina says there was nothing he could have done. She says a gun is a gun. She says her mom is in show business and sings, dances, and does magic tricks and gets paid millions, but she's really a secret agent, and she says she's on a secret mission, and when she's done, she's coming back for her. And Bruce plays along and says that's good, And we know there is no actual mother. We know that she doesn't have a mother. We know that she's an orphan. And she asks if he's ever kissed a girl. He says no. And I was like, okay. Definitely she has feelings for him and she doesn't want to, like, admit it. And she asks if he's ever, and basically he says no. She asks if he wants to. Alfred interrupts and says time for lessons and then invites Selina to join them. And she's just like, no, thank you. I don't want to be a part of that. Because she thinks it's really weird what's going on there, definitely. So the mayor rants to Essen, Jim and Harvey, and says his phone is ringing off the hook with complaints about the bombings. Jim makes it clear he thinks it's the mayor's fault and he asks how he's to blame. Jim says he has a pile of mentally ill people at Blackgate with no mental health professionals to treat them, so they have to send them out, and that's how Ian escaped. So the mayor is annoyed and tells him to find the guy today, and Essen says, yes, sir, and she asks Jim what's wrong with him. And she says she put John and his family in protective custody, but that doesn't help Ian since he doesn't know that. So then we see Lovecraft, and he's in Harvey's office, and he tells the guy he's going to get press charges and has the last piece of evidence. He says he has an eyewitness to tie him and the others to the crime, and he tells Lovecraft to confess, and he threatens, and Harvey, who snaps and says he will rip him open, this polite mask is back on, and he tells Lovecraft it's good to see him. So definitely Lovecraft, this is going to be interesting to see what happens with him. So Harvey shows Jim the file on Gregor Kostanov, who worked for Nikolai before he died, Nico, and they wonder who has the cash in the beef with Falcone, and it could be anyone. They have no idea who it is. So I'm thinking it's Lovecraft, probably. So Fish gets out of her car and meets up with Kostanov, and they tell her right away, they tell us right away who it is, because he says they ran into a little trouble, and she says she has a lot riding on this job. She says it's Falcone's fault that Nikolai is dead, and they need to take Falcone's money to get back at him. And she hands him a key to the truck he needed and tells him to break a leg. So then we get probably one of the funniest scenes of this episode. I thought this was genuinely hilarious, because Bruce is underwater in the pool, but he's fully clothed. Like, I'm talking wearing shoes, like his button-down shirt and khaki pants. He's in the pool, like, he literally has shoes on in the pool. Like, what the fuck? Who does that? He comes back up, checks his time, and Selina's looking at him like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, I would totally be like Selina. I would just look at Bruce and be like, what are you doing? Like, who goes into the pool with shoes on? I've never seen anybody do that. And if you do, why would you go into the pool with shoes on? Do you want to mess up your shoes? It's not a good idea. I don't recommend you go into the pool with shoes on. Just don't. She asks if he thinks someone's going to mug him with a diving board. I love that line. She's like, you think someone's going to mug you with, like, a diving board? And he says he's learning willpower and self-discipline. She tells him he needs to be mean and ruthless to survive on the streets. And she tells him he's a nice kid and will be mincemeat after 5 minutes on the street no matter how long he can hold his breath. And I agree with Selina's saying. He needs to stick up for himself. He needs to realize that, yes, he is a very tough individual, but he isn't too nice of a kid. He's a very polite kid. He's a very sweet kid. But then you get someone like Selina, who is a nice girl, but she's very, tough. She's a tough criminal. She will kill someone if she has, she will beat someone up if she has to. I mean, that's just the way Selina rolls. And I like the way Selina's trying to kind of get Bruce to come out of his shell. I think that's really interesting, and I like that. Especially when we get to their next scene, which I'll talk about. So Ed's listening to a quiz show while he works, and he knows all the answers. He gets someone to explode and giggles excitedly. He goes down to tell them that HMX is very difficult to manufacture, and he is used to penetrate iron. And Harvey says, like the vault, the bank, and he says, no, that's steel. And they wonder if it's the Gotham Armory, which is very old. And they wonder if Falcone was the one that bought it. Now, here's the thing I liked here. The case was separate. The case was not separate with the Wayne killer thing. This had to do with the Wayne thing, which I definitely like. Because if the case would have just been separate, I wouldn't have been happy with that. But the case related to what was going on with Falcone. So Ian tells them the bomb is right. He sets it off and it blows small chunks out the door. Casanova says it didn't work, but then the door falls out. Ian asks if he'll keep his promise that no one else will get hurt, and he says sure, and walks off. They're loading up the money when GCPD surrounds them. They call for Ian and tell him that John and his family are safe and in protective custody. The Russians aren't putting down their weapons. Ian walks towards them with his hands up, and Jim hears a phone call. Trill says the truck has a bomb on it. Runs towards Ian, and he and Harvey are able to duck down before the truck explodes. Butch was lurking nearby and was the one that set off that bomb. So yes, it was Butch that did it, and I thought that was an awesome twist that we found out that Butch did. I thought that was really cool, definitely. So Then we get probably the best scene with Selina and Bruce. I love this scene. I thought this was probably one of the best scenes of the season so far. I mean, it's just, the thing I love about this plot is that it is not a very action-packed plot or anything. It is just Bruce coming out of his shell, but it's getting closer and closer to that reveal of him becoming a vigilante and him becoming as dark as he is, and I like that Selina is the one that's turning him into this, because I definitely enjoy that. So Selina and Bruce, they're swapping smiles as they eat, and she throws a donut at him, and says she bets he can't hit her. She tells him to hit her, and she'll let him kiss her. She throws more food at him. They go into a full-on food fight. You see Alfred, like, smiling. He's very happy that Bruce is, basically just becoming a regular kid, because he's been ridiculed all this time, and he's like, he has that, like, total smile on his face, like, that's my boy. That's kind of the smile he has. And I was very happy for Bruce, definitely, because I think definitely that Selina's going to help Bruce come out of his shell. So his phone rings, and it's Jim, who says he's trying to get out there, and Alfred tells him it's all right and says she's been a breath of fresh air. Alfred doesn't rush him this time, and I guess that she's going to stay there. And honestly, I want Selina to stay there. I don't want Selina with Jim, because I like Selina with Jim, but she goes away, and then she's in one scene, and then she goes away. She randomly comes back, she goes away. It keeps happening. When she's with Bruce, it feels so much more interesting. It feels, fresh. It feels realistic. I like it, and I like this, this is probably my favorite thing the show has done so far, is have Selina join Bruce. I definitely really enjoy that, and I think it's working perfectly, and I love their combo. And I know I keep praising this plot, but it really is one of the best things the season has done. It's really gotten the season moving perfectly, and I love that, definitely. Because Selina Kyle was a character who I really liked in the episodes we saw, and I didn't think she was getting enough screen time, and the actress herself is a very talented actress. I don't know who she is, but she is a very talented actress, and I could see some Emmy consideration for both of these two, definitely. You got, most times child actors, they're very annoying, but these two are very good, definitely, and I definitely like what they're doing here. So, then we get a very interesting scene, because Liza comes home and finds Oswald sitting in her bedroom, and obviously, I'm like, okay, shit is going to go down, because he is going to confront her about what he knows. And he says he has to speak to her, and he says she knows who he is, and she says Falcone would kill him if he knew he was there, and he says he knows she's spying for Fish, and Liza says he has no proof, but he says suspicion is a funny thing, and Falcone would start doubting her every time he looked at her. She says he cares about her, and he says, let's call him and see, and I thought that was awesome. He's like, let's call him and see, shall we? He dials, and she tells him to stop. He tells her that his secret is safe, that her secret is safe. He says he won't tell because she's going to keep working for Fish and won't tell anyone he was there, or she'll die. So, that's huge what's going to happen there. I personally feel she's going to die, because she obviously knows that Falcone's very tough. She knows that Falcone will kill her, and she knows that Oswald is very intimidating. Plus, Oswald, the theme of this season has been him kind of manipulating people, so I kind of feel like he's just going to, basically just not go, not do that anyway. He's just going to kill her no matter what, because I think that's what he wants to do. He wants to kill her because he's spying for Falcone, and he's basically just has his own agenda. So I think that's probably what he's going to do. I don't think he's just going to let, Liza go. Even if she does listen to his demands, I think that he's just going to kill her no matter what. So Harvey shows up at GCPD, asks to talk to Jim, and he says Lovecraft is scared, and he thinks he did it. He says things are going to move soon. Harvey tells him good job on the Ian case and takes off. And Harvey tells Jim they've moved Ian to Arkham, and all the Blackgate Psycho inmates are heading there as well. So every criminal they've dealt with are going to this Arkham asylum. And I think that's really cool what's going on, because here's what I'm thinking is going to happen. Now, I don't know if this is going to happen, but I'm kind of thinking of this. It's kind of a weird theory, but it makes sense, because I kind of feel like what they're going to do is they're going to have all the villains we've seen, like all the one episode villains we've seen, kind of sort of like band together and turn against Jim, because I just feel like that's where we're trying to get at here. We're trying to show when crime was at its worst here, and crime is at its worst, but we're going to the mid-season finale, and definitely something big is going to happen, and I know a lot of things are definitely going to happen already, but definitely that's going to be interesting to see. So he says that Ian told him the bomb in the truck wasn't his, and he didn't know whose it was, and Butch comes to see Fish, and says all of the men are dead, including Casanova and theirs. He asks if she's mad about the money being destroyed, and she says no, the point was to harm Falcone, and that part worked out. And the mayor calls a press conference and says they've had recent tragedy in Gotham as a result of the criminally insane not getting the help they need, and, we then see the bus full of everyone getting off to this asylum, and I think my prediction is going to be true here. And then we get the amazing twist in this episode. I love this twist. This was such a well-done twist. Now, it did seem kind of soap opera, and it kind of seemed kind of like it wouldn't work, but it ended up working very well, in my opinion. Because Jim leaves Barbra a message, begging her to come back and saying he has nothing without her and that he loves her. And it turns out that Barbra is sleeping with Renee, and she's still in Gotham, but nope, she is back with Renee. So, I don't know what's going to happen, but if you guys want Barbra gone, hopefully she's gone for this episode, because I hate Renee now. I already hated Renee. I mean, Renee was a character that I hated her. I really did. And now I officially hate Renee. And it's going to be interesting to see definitely why Barbra decided to do this. I mean, it seemed like Barbra trusted Jim, but I don't know. Why did Renee get her to do this? Did she make this decision herself? That's going to be interesting to see. Do you think my prediction with the asylum is true? I just feel like that's going to happen. I feel like it's definitely going to be interesting to see what happens there. Lovecraft. Do you think that Lovecraft really is the one that killed the Waynes? Next week is the fall finale, which I am actually really, really looking forward to. I think it's going to be amazing, especially after this episode. I was so into this episode. Even the case, I was into the case, and I'm usually not, and I was surprised by how into this episode I really was. The Selina and Bruce stuff was by far the best, but I loved everything that was going on. Oswald, I do not think he is going to keep his promise to Liza. I don't think he's going to. He has his own agenda, definitely, and I don't think he's going to keep that promise to her. It looks like next week Selina is going to kind of take Bruce on, like, sort of like a revenge mission of some sort, like, sort of like some sort of mission to maybe fight back. I don't know. That's going to be interesting to see. We know that she is trying to find out who his killer was as well. So I'm thinking that maybe they're going to go on their own little mission to find out what's going on there. I definitely love the bond between them, and I want this to continue. If they continue this, I'm going to be very, very happy, because this is one of the best bonds I've seen one of the best bonds I've seen in anything Gotham has done. They are the two best characters now, Bruce and Selina. They just work perfectly together, and I love them together, definitely. And I'm looking forward to seeing when they get older, because I know when they get older, they are going to start relationships, so that's going to be interesting to see as well. Is Fish going to find out that Oswald knows? Do you think Oswald's going to turn against Fish? Maybe he'll turn against Falcone. That would be an interesting twist if Oswald turned against Falcone, because I could actually see that happening. Oswald all season has had his own agenda. He hasn't had a set person that he's not like, oh, I'm working with this person. No, I'm working with this person. No, he's working with this person, this person, this person, this person. He never has had a set person he's working with. So if he turns to Falcone, I'm not going to be surprised if he just, abandons Falcone. That's going to be interesting to see. Maroni seems to be done. That whole thing with Maroni, that arc seems to be over. But let me know what you guys saw this episode. I thought it was amazing. My only issue with this episode is they really need to be careful, because I have a really hard time differentiating between Harvey and Harvey Dent. I just have a very hard time doing that. I do like that they've introduced his character. I think he's very good. He was important for this episode, and I like that he's working with them, and he is going to be a series regular next year, but they need to kill off Harvey or something, because, like, I can't keep referencing Harvey. It's too confusing for me, definitely. But that's my review. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll see you guys in my next video, which will be my review for The Flash, so I will see you guys for that. And, yeah, so I'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.